Holy is the ultimate gamer. He's earned that name.
Holy One.
A great guy, and his videos are fantastic.
System. I'll admit, I was like, oh, nice one, Battle Tanker! Investigate.
Didn't I warn you not to set foot in here until the job was done? You should have listened to my advice. There's nothing to discuss. You wasted... Destroy it? You've been listening to Mother, haven't you? She slithered her way into your confidence. Well, I am... Maybe I am, and maybe I'm not. Why not let the results speak for themselves? People want to buy clean drugs, and I want to sell them. Under my leadership, Adrenatime will live up to its promise, unlike certain mothers. Adrenatime has already claimed thousands of lives, but my drug will be the pride and joy of the Ambrose family. And if we pick up where Gorgon left off, then the human testing phase is well ahead of... You surprise me, Captain. Once we fix the chemistry of Adrenatime, the Marauder problem will simply take care of itself.
Yeah, fight horrific science with horrific science. That's always worked out in the...
The days of the old Adrenatime are numbered, and Marauders are bound for extinction. Insane people addicted to drugs are Mother's problem. Am I to be held accountable? Besides, Mother is determined to ruin everything she touches. First Adrenatime, then our family, and now my ambition. She never gave me a chance, forbade it. I see no reason why she deserves a second one.
She sure as hell doesn't. But you can still give her one. That choice is on you now.
Mother never let me anywhere near R&D. I was always her incompetent little brat. Farewell, Captain.
My promises, Captain.
Getting our leg exercises in, at least.
Crawl through another HIA than work in a...
This reminds me of the terraformers. Makes my skin crawl.
I'll give you one thing, little weasel. You are relentless. I did everything in my power to stop you, yet here you stand before me, offensively alive. Just so we're clear, if you intend to restart this machine, you'll have to go through me. I don't intend to kill me. If you believe this will be that simple, you haven't been paying. I can no more. I will. There is no working with Spacer's Choice. You work for them. If you refuse, they sell your contract to a rival firm staffed by your enemies. or seize your housing and turn you out onto the street. And if you've really irritated them, they simply kill you. Sincerely, I wish you luck. I suspect you're just... Besides that madman, Wells, judging by his wanted poster, he's always... He has it right. The board doesn't care for Halcyon. They'll do anything and use anyone to see their ends met.
Well, at least they're predictable.
She has no intention of curing the Marauders. She's a... Adrenatime is addictive. It's poison. The only way they can perfect it is by making it more The only way you're touching this I'd like... You've plumbed all the sordid depths of Gorgon. You know how many lives my work destroyed, and... You know that's not true, and still you say it. Either you are astonishingly naive, gravely misled, or a cynical opportunist. There is not a solution to every problem. Some things cannot, but enough. No turning back now.
That arrived in Halcyon was an unplanned variable. From the moment he landed in Emerald Vale, his actions altered the course of history. The events on Tartarus brought about the end of the board's authority. But the board's mistakes would haunt the colony for decades to come. The damage they left behind would require the work of a generation to repair. Dr. Phineas Wells began reviving a handful of the Hope's colonists. Engineers, scientists, technicians, and intellectuals. They were among the brightest minds the Earth had ever sent out into the stars. The Hope scientists and engineers woke up in a colony descending headlong into total collapse. With no way to return to Earth, they had no choice but to band together and devote themselves to the cause of saving Halcyon. The people of Halcyon were nothing if not hardy. In the absence of the board's authority, many of the colony's settlements banded together with a single purpose in mind: survival. Life was especially hard in the years to come. Some towns dissolved by attrition and starvation, but most of them found a way to carry on. In the years to come, Halcyon was forced to reckon with its newfound freedom. The board was gone, and for better or worse, the colony was responsible for its own destiny. As the colony struggled to survive, the inspirational story of the iconoclasts spread like wildfire, and Graham was able to bring many of the smaller Terra 2 townships into the fold. However, his zealous obsession with spreading the word blinded him to the needs of a growing organization, and the movement was unsustainable at scale. The iconoclast way seemed to work best, and ultimately petered out on Monarch. Consumed by paranoia, Lilia Hagen took Sublight Salvage in a controversial direction, openly accusing board officials of an extraterrestrial conspiracy. One day, an accident at the Groundbreaker's docking bay silenced her forever. Time would tell if her replacement could keep the Sublight family together. After returning to Edgewater, the deserters negotiated workplace reforms with Reed Thompson, including a single day of rest, which came to be known as a weekend. As the world around him changed, Thompson found himself pining for the old days. He was known to spend his weekends in the cantina, nursing one of the few remaining bottles of Zero G, and repeating to himself, "It's not the best choice, it's Spacer's choice." As for Adelaide McDevitt, she tended to her garden in solitude for another year before passing away. Her body was discovered some months later when Reed Thompson paid her a visit in an effort to make amends. Her remains were buried in a place of honor underneath the floor of the Edgewater Cannery. Reed believed this was what she always wanted. Under the leadership of Junlei Tennyson, the groundbreaker held firm against corporate influence. The ship's mechanical stability gave Junlei the time to educate a promising generation of engineers schooled in her family's traditions. The future of the groundbreaker looks promising. The rediscovery of the Hope and the abandonment of the lifetime employment program forced Byzantium to come to terms with some uncomfortable realities about the state of Halcyon. While Byzantines were reluctant to surrender the luxuries they'd grown accustomed to, the board's diminished authority gave them little choice in the matter. Nearly everyone had to learn to make do with less. Some even had to get jobs. It was a dark time indeed. Your influence shifted Ellie's perspective. She finally admitted, albeit grudgingly, that she just might need other people. Sometimes. With a steady income from the life insurance payouts, she was finally able to afford a ship of her own. She hired a small crew and flew supply missions to communities on the fringe. Some of them were even legal. Life in Halcyon was sobering for Felix Millstone. The grand revolution he dreamed of never came. There was no great awakening for the colony, no celebrations in the streets. There was only the hard, desperate work of trying to repair a broken colony. Felix never had a head for numbers, but if there was labor to be done, he was there to help. Eventually, Felix realized that the work of a revolution was done with two hands. As much as he enjoyed his adventures aboard the Unreliable, the vicar, known as Max, eventually decided that it was time to move on, to live out the life he had sought so long to create. He knew there were many in the colony who carried burdens much worse than the ones he had struggled with, and he devoted himself to easing their suffering wherever he could. He only ever took up arms again to defend the defenseless. Unshackled from a lifetime of striving and fighting the universe and himself, Vicar Maximilian de Soto was finally at peace. Once the matter with the Hope colonists was resolved, Junlei bashfully asked Parvati if she'd like to join her permanently on the Groundbreaker, and Parvati enthusiastically, if somewhat awkwardly, agreed. The stories of her adventures spread across the colony, and Parvati soon found herself the center of attention. Having served as the engineer of a renowned spacecraft, tramp freighters and wildcat miners sought her out by name. And in no time, she was a fixture in the Groundbreaker's mechanical ecosystem. She and Junlei were never far apart. Nyoka returned to Monarch to take another crack at making a permanent life for herself. She formed the Charon Group, a mercenary outfit of ragtag survivalists and wilderness experts. Anyone in need of a guide, or just looking to throw back a beer and swap stories, could find her camping on the trail or clearing an infestation. The SAM unit that accompanied you spread awareness of the product line's superior sanitation and maintenance capabilities across what was left of the colony. This led to a boost in SAM unit sales. Did you know that SAM units are the longest-lasting, toughest-acting cleaning solution in Halcyon? Minister Clark was released from house arrest, and his contact with you gave him a sense of renewed purpose and vigor. Once it became clear that no help would be coming from Earth, he threw his considerable efforts and talents into helping Halcyon manage the crisis before it. Chairman Rockwell served as the public face for the changes in Halcyon to come. Whenever you needed strings pulled or a voice to sell a policy change, Rockwell was only too happy to oblige. As for Dr. Phineas Wells, he spent his remaining years in his orbital lab. Though he was always haunted by the failures of his past, he was determined to make things right by building toward the future. Dr. Wells was able to revive many more scientists and engineers than he first expected, thanks to the additional batch of chemicals you stole from the Ministry. Wells never forgot about the human lives that were lost in acquiring these chemicals. The revival project was hard and painful work. But in the end, despite limited resources, over half the Hope's colonists were successfully revived. Even after Wells passed away, the Hope scientists and engineers worked night and day to pull Halcyon from the brink of collapse. Their efforts continue to this day, which may be reason enough for optimism. Dr. Wells laid the groundwork for the project to save the colony, but he would never live to see the fruits of his labor. He passed away a few years later. His work was carried on by the scientists and engineers he revived. Life will never be the same in Halcyon. It is widely agreed that the colony has a chance of stabilizing within a generation, owing to the hard work and determination of the surviving colonists. Recovery is a distant goal, and the path is long and uncertain. But the people of Halcyon carry on, determined as ever. And what about you, the unplanned variable in the history of Halcyon? Long after Wells passed away, you carried on his work with more energy, determination, and brilliance than he could ever muster. The years that followed were hard, but Halcyon survived by the efforts of the Hope's most promising colonists, the greatest of which was you. No one knows what's happened to Earth, and no one knows what the future has in store for Halcyon. All we know for certain is this: the name of the Unreliable and that of its intrepid captain will remain the subject of countless stories for years to come.